We get live right now, man. It's going down. Excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to episode 172 of Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff of brewhoop.com. My name is Riley Feldman, one of your usual co-hosts, doing a special solo edition of the podcast. My other co-hosts, Kyle Carr and Adam Paris, are away with Super Bowl party obligations, and the rest of the staff is taking a break to watch the big game. But Milwaukee Bucks basketball never stops, and figured rather than skip a week, an important week with a lot of stuff going on around the trade deadline, we'd give it a try to see how it goes with just me. If it sounds okay when I record it, it'll get posted. If it sounds horrible, don't worry about it. You're never going to hear it anyhow. So thanks for joining in. The Milwaukee Bucks, a 1-2 week leading up to and then through the trade deadline. We'll run through the results real quick, but obviously we're going to be talking mostly about what happened around the deadline. The week started for the Bucks on the road to finish their 5-game Western Conference road trip against the Phoenix Suns on national TV. Lose that one, 114-106. Big news coming out of that one was Chris Middleton rolling his ankle, having to go out. The news after the fact was he threw on a boot and was on crutches, but as far as we can tell, it was not a serious injury. It sounds like the prognosis is pretty good. He'll probably be out for a couple of weeks, depending on the severity of it. Kind of a blow in terms of his fit within the team. Obviously, his conditioning, things like that. So something to keep an eye on with the team. And then on Thursday, the Bucks finally returned home, faced the Minnesota Timberwolves, lose that one pretty heavily. 105-129. They're out. No Chris, no Dame Lillard. Pretty much got romped from start to finish. Trade deadline, we're missing our guy, Robin Lopez. So unsurprising to have lost that one. And then they have a back-to-back at home against the Charlotte Hornets. Finally get good right, win 120-84. The Bucks essentially scored near 70 points in the first half to Charlotte's less than 40. So it was pretty much a wrap from start to finish. The most notable thing obviously being Patrick Beverley's debut as a Milwaukee Buck. And so from there, we're just going to jump right into what we learned this week. What we learned was Patrick Beverley is going to have to save the Milwaukee Bucks season, ironically enough. He's the guy who, if you've watched basketball at all in the past decade, you pretty much know what he's going to bring. Tenacious defender, really, I don't want to say loudmouth, but he likes getting in the face of his opponents. He's technically slotted as a point guard. He's 6'2". He's 35 years old. He not necessarily like an amazing creator, but sufficient as a ball handler. Has good length. His reputation is defense. Offense is sort of a plus. He's a career 37% three-point shooter, but only I think 33% so far with the Sixers so far this year. So a guy who was not in any sort of trade rumors leading up to the deadline, from just perusing a little bit of Liberty Ballers, our colleagues over on our Philadelphia 76ers sister site. Seems like they were a bit shocked to have lost him. And I know that's all due respect to Kyle Lowry, who has indeed beat the hell out of us in the playoffs in the past. The idea, I believe, that Daryl Morey, the GM of the Sixers, said was because Kyle's coming, more or less, or that there are going to be reinforcements, that Patrick Beverley was sort of a redundant force, which is interesting. It seems like he, in this short stint, 48 games or 47 games with the Sixers, kind of became a leadership guy. Obviously, typical guy. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's on the other team, you despise him. So curious that we get him. In the main thing we learned is, he's here to save the season. He has previously played under Doc Rivers, so they have experience together. I think that probably has a lot to do with the Bucks going out and getting him. He fits as the alternate to Malik Beasley that you could envision in your mind, either starting in case Beasley, for whatever reason, he's getting targeted so much that you really can't start the guy in a playoff series, or later as the game closes down and you're going small ball, or you just really need a perimeter point of attack defender. Beverley's the guy. Bit older, but I believe he's a bit, I have to go check. I think he's either at the age or a little bit younger than PJ Tucker was when we acquired him from the Rockets. And so far this season, Beverley is averaging about 20 minutes a game. So he has a lot of wear and tear just overall over the course of a career, but seems pretty spry. Seems like you're not going to need him for more than, at least in the regular season, 20 minutes a night, maybe. So long as the team can load manage the guy and kind of keep him healthy and ready for the playoffs, to me, this is as much of a home run trade as we probably could have asked for, given the asset situation that John Horst has put himself in. We were going to be hard pressed to find anybody in the buyout market that was really going to make a huge difference. I know we like to joke on this podcast about Marvin Williams. There's a reason why we joke about Marvin Williams, who was supposed to be the savior, and then he showed up and was not good. Same with Pau Gasol. I mean, you go down the list. Buyout guys typically across the NBA are not able to make necessarily the impact that you would expect, for probably a whole host of reasons. But if this team was hoping to stand pat at the deadline and find somebody in the buyout market who is going to fill that role of point of attack defender primarily, or even like a backup big sort of situation, I think John Horst looked at the landscape and said that's probably not going to happen. And so of all the options, is Beverley older? Yes. Is he, or does he have a history with Damian Lillard in terms of on court and off court sparring? Yes. Do I think all of that will go immediately to the past and things will work out just fine for the most part? Also, yes. You can kind of see it already immediately in the Charlotte game, which is where Beverley made his debut. Comes in, immediately hits a three. He's he's so exuberant on the court. He just brings a totally different energy from anybody else we've had on the team in a while. And I could see where that could maybe run thin, or you would watch and be like, oh, this guy's sort of a chaos agent. I don't know what the deal is, but we had that, and then he mixes it up. He has no real back down whatsoever. And this is not to imply that the rest of the team, the rest of the veteran core especially, has any sort of back down, but it's just a different kind of mentality. Like, most of our core view the regular season as something that they sort of just have to get through, which is fine and true to an extent. But when it's something you have to get through, at the same time you're trying to integrate somebody like Damian Lillard, you had a coaching staff that got canned. Now you have a new coach in charge. Like, this project, the nature of it changed so radically in the past month or so that you can't help but need somebody or want to see a little bit more fire from all of the guys. And we can talk about or wave away the losses that as they rack up here, like the Bucks are trying to put something together on the fly. Coach came in. He only has 2 practices. I mean, we got 2 practices now. Just watch out, rest of the league. We're coming for you. But this is a plane that John Horst got in the air, started taking apart mid-air, and is now trying to reassemble into something else while still in the air without crashing into the ground. You're going to need as much help as you can possibly get. So if you can get somebody like Beverley who understands what Doc Rivers wants, understands like how to communicate with him, how to be an intermediary, what the emphasis are, and if that guy can also be a viable player in your final lineup, I think that's a great get for the Bucks. I should say, in exchange for Beverley, the Bucks did end up trading Payne and their own 2027 second round pick to the Sixers. It sucks that you have to move draft capital. Second round picks are not worth all that much in general, and for the Bucks, or a team in the Bucks position, they're really not worth a whole bunch outside of accumulating a whole ton of them to send out in a trade for somebody like a Jay Crowder. Payne, I don't know. There wasn't anything to really complain about his tenure with the Bucks. He was okay. Probably would have been a better fit, like a lot of different guys that we've talked about this season, if conceptually we still had Drew Holiday on the team. You understand the obvious, okay, we needed a Jeff Teague in the past. Who's going to be the Jeff Teague this go around? Why not Payne, who is a more than serviceable backup point guard, doesn't defend a lot, but neither did Jeff Teague. You just needed somebody to kind of help organize the offense. Once Lillard showed up, and the reality of the fact that you're going to run Lillard 40-ish minutes in the playoffs, and then Giannis is going to do ball handling, Chris is going to do ball handling, and then where are the possessions that you really need Cam? You could make the argument you still want somebody who's a traditional point guard for those 8 minutes that Lillard would rest, but we got a guy back still in Beverley who, while probably not as adept of a ball handler or a creator as Payne, still can do a decent job. He did a good job in the Hornets game. Just bring the ball up the court, initiate, move the ball, hand it over to Giannis, and then kind of keep moving to pull the defense and make sure that it's not fully set even when you yourself and not Giannis are pulling the ball up the court. So shout out to you, Payne. You'd probably be an okay fit in Philadelphia. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to look back and point out what my favorite Payne memory was, but if we win the title, he will get a ring. So shout out to that guy. The other move that the Bucks made at the deadline, Robin Lopez and cash considerations to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for, and let me look this up. I want to get this right because I did look it up. Exchange for the draft rights to Dimitrios Agravanis, who is a 29-year-old Greek forward, I believe. More importantly, he's a client of Giannis's agent, Alex Saritsis. So the Greek connection goes ever deeper. If you, again, as with a lot of things, if you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know my level of apathy to antipathy with Robin Lopez. It's not necessarily just Robin, although I don't find just being a big dork as your personality trait all that endearing, but that's his bit, so that's fine. I just thought from a team construction standpoint, in both stints, both when he was a bit more spry and then especially this last go around, it's a problem when your main backup center to Brook Lopez is his literal twin. And Robin was a really solid center for a long stretch there. I think he played like 480 straight starts across his Trailblazers and then thereupon run. So the guy was a very serviceable player. The first go around, he was probably still workable, but at this point, it looked like it was pretty much a wrap from preseason onwards. It's fine if he was here to secure Brook and his re-signing with the team, but not going to shed a lot of tears for the end of the Robin Lopez and Milwaukee Bucks era, or in Milwaukee era part 2. The important part there is, I believe, and things are still a little unclear, but from what I gather, the move brings the Bucks under the second apron of the luxury tax. Now, if Chris Middleton hits his unlikely bonus contracts or contract bonuses, which in this case, I think somebody said was the Bucks win the title. I think maybe that was an optimistic thing. I'm not sure if we know specifically what Chris's unlikely bonuses are, but in any event, if Chris doesn't hit those, and if we don't sign anybody with that now open roster spot, then the Bucks will be under the second apron of the luxury tax line. What that means is it essentially avoids a lot of the hardships that have been introduced into the most recent NBA CBA, whereupon teams that are in the second above the second tier, they cannot trade future first-round picks out of certain points. They have much more trouble matching contracts or salaries in trades. You're going to have trouble with getting buyout guys. You're going to have trouble. It essentially just makes it tougher to continue to pick guys off the scrap heap and churn them through while you have a massive salary wage bill. So there's a possibility that if the Bucks do not find somebody they want to fill that 15th spot with, they'll look a little bit better in terms of flexibility this upcoming summer. Now, John Horst is going to have to make a decision here of weighing the pros of that flexibility versus, is there somebody who gets bought out there to say, okay, we definitely want that guy. I struggle to imagine who that guy could be. Obviously, the main concern now with Robin gone is not so much how do you fill the Robin role. Up until a week and a half ago when Brook Lopez was away for the birth of his first kid, congrats, Brook, there wasn't such a thing as a Robin role. You do wonder, though, okay, do you want an alternate to Bobby Portis? Do you look for more big men? Maybe another point of attack defender hits the market and you say, doesn't hurt to have more guys necessarily who could do that, especially because that's been the greatest weakness for the defense all season long. So I'll be curious to see what John Horst does. He sounded pretty aggressive in his comments after the trade deadline with the press, saying, we'll be looking to fill that spot, but if it's Pau Gasol, whoever the equivalent is this season, is it really worthwhile? Do you really want Pau Gasol, the 2024 version of whoever Pau Gasol is, to fill? We got enough veteran guys. I don't know if we necessarily need more veteran guys. So keep an eye on that. Maybe if it's prorated, maybe end of the season, they'll give one of the two guys, literally it's only one two-way guy now, which is Ty Washington. Maybe they'll do somebody a solid. But for now, we are down to 14 full-time players and Ty Washington on that 16th spot, the two-way contract. So it's something to keep an eye on is the depth. The upside, though, this past week in terms of other things that we've learned, Doc Rivers knows that there are other young guys on the team. There's Marjon Beauchamp and Andre Jackson Jr., who both made triumphant returns to the lineup, having been essentially exiled since Doc took over. Turns out maybe it was just a matter of trying to continue to get Pat Connaughton and Bobby Portis and Jay Crowder into playing shape. That's what Doc has implied in most of his press conferences the past couple weeks, is he's more concerned right now with getting his veteran guys up to speed, making sure they're in shape, things like that. We've watched the team all season, and we see in our minds and in our analysis the potential in Andre Jackson Jr., especially Marjon. For my money, a little bit less, but there are still people who are pretty high on him. And so when we've thought about what plagues the team, first it was schematically it looks bad with the way that Adrian Griffin was running it. And then once something gets a little bit more rationalized, the reality of the weaknesses of the Malik Beasley, Damian Lillard starting pair on the perimeter becomes very obvious. And so we look to an Andre Jackson Jr., we look to a Marjon Beauchamp to say, they're on the roster, they're young, they have upside. You start working them in now, maybe they'll help you out down the road. Whether or not now that we're past the trade deadline, Doc is going to change his tune, I have my doubts. If Chris misses significant time, Rivers' hand, I should say, may be forced, and he may have to give one of those guys some minutes just to backfill minutes. But all indications are, outside of a couple of minutes here or there, and apparently AJ Green getting some run, those guys are not going to get force-fed a ton of opportunities. Bit of a shame, but at the same time, Rivers is here to win right now, and in his mind, right or wrong, it's not going to be through the young guys. The young guys may not have as much of a role, and I'm not going to do a full 8-man rotation right now because that would be sacrilegious without my other participants in the exercise here is with me, but we'll probably do it next week when everybody's back. But if you run through who would be the 8-man rotation now that Patrick Beverley is on board, so you have your key five, your starting five, who are Giannis, Chris, Dame, Beasley, and Brook. I think that feels pretty solid. Next three, Patrick Beverley for 6th, Jay Crowder number 7, and then let's see here who would be number 8. I guess Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, one of those two. And if you want to push it out to 9 and add one of those guys in at a 9th spot, okay. But who in that group is going to be taken out of the rotation except for injury by Andre or Marjon or AJ Green even? Maybe Pat, Pat's probably the most likely. Bobby, if it seems he's going to shoot us out of games and his defense is too bad. But it seems like for all intents and purposes, we have our 8 to 9 guys, and they all have nearly a decade plus of playing experience. And if you don't have that, you're probably not going to be cracking the rotation. We can lament that all we like, but that's kind of the reality of where we're at. The question is going to be, is Rivers also going to run these guys into the ground before the playoffs are even here? Now, because they've been shorthanded, Jay Crowder has had to play a lot of minutes. Giannis did not play that many minutes in the Timberwolves beatdown. I think he played 27, so you were able to give him a little bit of rest there. Dame was pretty efficient in his return against the Hornets as well. It didn't have to play the whole game, so there are opportunities here or there. But as I was talking about on last week's episode of the podcast, the schedule from here on, it's really tough. A lot of road games, good competition. At the time, I think I said there were 5 gimme games, one of which being that Hornets game that the Bucks did end up winning. So now we're down to 4 gimme games left in about 30, I think 29, 30 games to go. So we're going to find out fast, and 30 games is not a lot of time to work things out. But it is a lot of time to rack up minutes on older bodies. So keep an eye on that. Once we're back fully healthy, if that ever happens, depending on Chris's return, that's when we kind of see rubber hit the road. Okay, are we still playing Dame and Giannis 35, 36, 37, 38, almost 40 minutes in close games against good competition? And what does that mean for how the team heads into the playoffs condition-wise? So something to keep an eye on, but so far I'd say the 8 to 9 man rotation, all vets, do not see a future in which the young guys are able to break through, barring injury or something completely absurd happening. One more thing in terms of what we learned this past week, the Giannis-Dame pairing continues to be a work in progress, but upside is... how do I want to put this? So we've looked at this season as this offense is historically good relative to the rest of NBA history, obviously. But there's still a lot of room for growth, especially in the pairing between those two guys. And the defense has been god-awful. So now, since the Prunty/Rivers era, the defense is climbing. It's still not great. We're 18th overall in the league in terms of defensive rating, but that's better than the 21 to 20th. It's a slow climb, but they're getting there. The defense has looked better. At least it looks more structured. It looks more, I wouldn't say calm or logical per se, but I think there are far fewer broken plays. There's far fewer transition opportunities given up. So it seems like even though Rivers and his staff have not had a lot of time, they've been able to make a couple of small changes to make the defense something better than absolutely awful. The lament, though, since Rivers' arrival, is that the offense has looked not great at the same time. It's still pretty good. I mean, you guys are still getting out there and doing individual great plays, but we have had moments late in games where it's the wrong guy's taking the shot, the wrong guy is getting the ball inbounded to him when you need free throws. And so the question continues to go back to the Giannis-Dame combination. My working theory, don't have a lot to back this up because it's a small sample and the guys have been kind of in and out of the lineup due to injury. I think part of the reason why the offense looks a little bit worse now than it had prior to Rivers' arrival especially is, I wonder if Doc is really trying to push those two in particular to change their tack. Like, you're going to essentially play together much more deliberately, work through all the kinks that's going to take. But you guys need to find a way to not just coexist, because what they've been doing all season is coexisting in a way that made them one of the best offenses in the league. So it's not like it was coexist and it was horrible. It was coexist and it looked pretty good, but probably a little too disjointed or too disconnected to be something you can rely on in the playoffs. Now, the assignment is go out there and make it a point to look to play off of one another's strengths, right? So there's maybe something a little bit more deliberate where it's not as my turn, your turn as it once may have been. And part of that is going to be growing pains, because what I imagine what happened, if we're just putting on my conspiracy hat, right? Solo, nobody's here to stop me. Griffin came in. We had Terry Stotts, who is going to be the offensive mind. Stotts leaves, right? Okay. Now, the rest of the coaching staff and Griffin have to essentially pick up the slack of understanding what makes Damian Lillard a great offensive player, and how do you fit that together with what Giannis does, and the added caveat of none of this coaching staff has ever coached Giannis either. Like, if you had Mike Budenholzer knows how Giannis plays. Like, he's designed systems all the way around Giannis, and now we're kind of reaping that a little bit, because it's proving difficult to get Giannis to defer to another guy, especially a guard, I should say. But the context of the situation is you have two superstars, neither of which this coaching staff has dealt with. The one guy who had coached one of them had left before the season even started. We know the rest of that story. So once the season starts, even if Griffin and company have some ideas, maybe it just proves too difficult. There's too many issues with the defense taking their time and their energy, trying to get everybody on the same page. At a certain point, you essentially just tell the players, hey, it's up to you guys to figure it out on the court. And now it would not surprise me if there's a lot more rigidity in terms of play calling, in terms of emphasis, in terms of what Rivers especially wants to see those two guys do together, and for their teammates as well. And so maybe the offense, if I'm being completely optimistic, is it's taken a hit, not because all of a sudden we don't know how to play, but because we're trying to move from disparate parts to a coherent whole. And in doing that, literally in regular season games with not a ton of time outside of some film work to make it happen, I think that's a huge challenge, and part of the challenge that Rivers was going to obviously knew he was walking into. What's critical is, are the players buying in, and are they going to stick to it? Because it's going to be some tough going. We've seen by the results they've not been good, but the upside is we've heard from the players, they themselves feel and see the differences, the improvements, even if the wins are not yet coming. The trouble is going to be, how long does it take for those improvements to turn into consistent winning against not some of the absolute worst teams in the league like the Hornets? So that's just a theory I'm throwing out there. The really bad spot with Chris going down, not so much because we can't backfill. I think Pat can do an okay job. And then again, if it forces some of the young guys some minutes, that's overall it's a net positive. But in terms of rhythm, it and fit, feel, things like that, to lose Chris now is a big downer, because he was playing really well as that third option, especially. The positive, if you want to be positive, is it seems like Chris did not have much of a problem fitting in with Lillard or Giannis or whoever he was playing with. Chris is Chris. He can fit in. Like, we know what his game is. He knows what his game is, and he knows how to essentially make it conform to whoever is around him. So the concern for Middleton is going to be conditioning, how long the healing takes, how long it takes for him to kind of feel confident with the strength of his ankle again. More than the offense really takes off while he's gone, because Giannis and Lillard finally get it to work, and then Chris comes back and it gets knocked off again. I'm not concerned about that at all. It's probably actually, is it dark to say that it may be good for Chris to have another stint of rest? Probably a bad part of the season for that to be happening. You'd rather, if he had to take a couple weeks off, it happen in January, late December maybe, but if it saves him a little bit more wear and tear and he's a little bit more fresh for the playoffs, it's probably not a bad thing with the number of minutes that Doc Rivers is throwing out there. So that's what's going on in the Bucks world. I'm trying to look through here, see if there's anything else that jumps out at me in terms of things that we learned this week. Pat Bev in the post-game press conference with the Miller Lights, he recommended everybody in Pfizer Forum subscribe to his podcast. I think it's literally just called the Pat Bev Pod with Roan, who is the miscellaneous white guy du jour on that program, as on every NBA player podcast for whatever reason. And I want to give a shout out to Jackson Gross, my colleague, who was there to cover the game that night. Post-game press conference gives name, his affiliation. He's with brewhoop.com. Pat Bev says, hell of a name. I can't quite tell. I don't want to steal Jackson's thunder, whether or not he was complimenting Jackson's name or brewhoop.com. But what I'm going to do is thread the needle and say Patrick Beverley was complimenting both. And this is obviously a open invitation. I'm not going to go on the Pat Bev pod, and neither, as far as I'm aware, maybe something's happened in the background. Neither are Kyle or Adam. But Pat, you're more than welcome to come on to Dear Diaries, and we can plug your podcast then as well. We'd love to have you. So if you want your name associated with a really good name, Jackson can be there as well, and you can be featured on brewhoop.com. So that's what's going on with the Bucks. Let's go ahead. We'll just, obviously I'm not going to, it would be kind of absurd, right, to do rapid fire questions by myself. We're just going to run through the schedule in the upcoming week. We are this close, finally, to the All-Star break, in which I think the running joke is if we just get a couple more practices, we're going to be a good spot. We have to watch out for the 1-2-3 Cancun effect this week, but 3 games, 2 of them at home, 1 on the road, and then we finally get another week off after that. So starts tonight when this podcast drops, Monday, February 12th, hosting the Denver Nuggets. Tuesday, back-to-back, the Miami Heat are in town, and then the team hits the road on Thursday to face the lowly, also really, really bad Memphis Grizzlies. What would we say for the record this week? I'm going to say, let's say 2-1. The loss to the Nuggets, just because that's a tough matchup for anybody, and we're going to be missing Chris, and we already lost to them, even though it was close. I'll be curious how that one goes. Heat, I believe I saw Terry Rozier went out for tonight's game with a knee injury. Hopefully he's okay, but they're down a couple guys already. I know Jimmy Butler, I believe he missed the Celtics game as well, but that may have been for family reasons. So curious on that one, but I feel pretty good about the Heat at home. And then the Grizzlies they were bad. They had a bad start to the season. They've only gotten worse as the season has gone on. Do not be surprised. It'll be the 1-2-3 Cancun Bowl, that one, but I'm hoping our just like level of talent and experience will get them through even when both teams have no interest in being there whatsoever. And then it's off to Indianapolis for a couple of our guys to spend the weekend at All-Star Weekend, taking part in the Saturday events, and then obviously the All-Star game. And then I don't know if we've heard yet. I know Doc and his staff have been nominated for the All-Star game. Doc said he would like to take a vacation, which is also funny because he hasn't been doing, obviously, ESPN broadcast, but it's not like he's been coaching for the past couple months. So I'm curious Joe Prunty? Are we going to see Joe Prunty coach the All-Star game in Indianapolis? Do dreams come true? Do you believe in dreams? Or as the inimitable Kevin Garnett said, anything is possible. Maybe we'll see Joe Prunty coaching some of the world's greatest basketball stars this coming Sunday in Indianapolis. But we're going to cut it off there. Short podcast this week, like I said, solo pod. Thank you guys for listening. You can follow us over on brewhoop.com. We got Monday morning media roundup, Wednesday weekly wrap up, the Tuesday trackers, the results of the Tuesday trackers on Fridays. We have occasionally questions and antlers, and of course we will have all the game coverage of the coming week, All-Star Weekend, wherever the Bucks are involved. Brew Hoop will be there. We thank you guys for listening. We thank you for watching. If you watch over on YouTube, share the podcast with a friend. Share a podcast with Patrick Beverley. Send it to him in his Instagram DMs. I'm sure he reads his DMs. We appreciate all the support, and we'll talk to you again next week.